All right, today we are going to be talking about the Second Continental Congress. So things are really getting going here. The American Revolution is just on the very verge of beginning. And so now we need to talk about kind of how do we respond to it? How do we organize? What's the process here for fighting a war, for creating a government, and so forth? Well, the Second Continental Congress is going to be in 1775. The First Continental Congress we didn't really talk about, but it's because it really accomplished very little. Not all of the colonies even sent delegates to it, so it lacked unity. It lacked kind of that governing mandate, right? So they were corresponding with the king. They were pleading their case for parliament. They were doing those sorts of things, but it just really yielded very little in way of results. So what we're going to see is that in the Second Continental Congress, this is taking place in the aftermath of Lexington and Concord. Things have definitely changed. Here we see a picture. This is Independence Hall in Pennsylvania. And so this is where they are going to meet. Um, every state, or I should say every colony at that point, is going to send delegates because everybody recognizes the importance of this. The British are going to have a response to Lexington and Concord. They're going to have a response to having their soldiers attacked and killed. How are we going to protect ourselves? How are we going to present a unified front? What's our response going to be? We need leaders. We need people who are going to speak with one clear voice rather than 13 separate colonies all having a different response. We need one kind of group to speak for all of us. And that's what the Second Continental Congress was. So the reality, though, is just like Congress today, it's always been split. The Second Continental Congress is going to be split between two factions, right? One are considered to be the conservatives. They're led by John Dickinson, among others, right? But these are people who they may even believe in independence. They may desire independence, but they felt like maybe the cost was too high. They felt like maybe if we went to war with Great Britain to earn our independence, that it would ultimately end in disaster. And then what would we have gained? Nothing but dead sons of the revolution, right? And so they're going, the cost is incredibly high, and the odds of us winning over Great Britain are so very slim. So what the conservatives wanted was reconciliation. They said, let's make amends with Great Britain, but let's do it in a way that earns us something. Let's really push for representation. We'll continue to be British. We'll continue to be loyal. We'll continue to pay taxes, but we'll do so using representation as our bartering chip. Let's make them give in to that first. Now, the other faction are going to be considered the radicals, right? They're going to be led by John Adams. Now, these are the ones that say, you know what, it's too far gone. The offenses by the king and by parliament are too egregious. And so there can be only one response, and that is independence. If they will be unwilling to grant independence, then we're going to have to fight for it. So that's kind of the way these two sides saw things. They tried corresponding with the king. They tried the conservatives' way. They said, we would be happy to be British, loyal British tax-paying citizens. We'll stop all the rebellious activity if you give us representation, if you have limited taxing authority over us. So they put some stipulations on it. This thing that they wrote to the king was considered the olive branch petition. It was us reaching out to the king with the express purpose of saying, let's heal the divide. Now, it's interesting because this to me seems a very measured response. I don't like it or dislike it, but it does seem like the adult thing to do, right? They tried diplomacy first, but we're going to see the response to this is going to be very quickly rejected by the king. In fact, he sees it as an insult. This is not something that he's happy with. He doesn't see this as them being mature and diplomatic and adult about things. Instead, he sees this as a slap in the face. Who do you think you are to tell me you'll be a British citizen if, right? What do you have that gives you the authority to negotiate with me, right? He said, I'm your king. You do these things because I'm the king and you're the subject, not because we have some, relationship where we make deals and we barter and we negotiate. He said, no, I'm going to make the rules and you're going to follow the rules. He really considered this a slap in the face. So here we see good old King George and all of his, fancy stuff. This is 100 years away, right, from the style and attitude of the colonist. And he's quoted as, upon reading the Olive Branch petition, he's quoted as saying that blows must decide if they are to be subject to this country or independent. Now, you tell me what you think that means, right? I mean, the reality is he's saying if this is going to be their attitude, if they're going to be rebellious, then war it is, right? If they want to have their little cute war for independence, let's go. Let's see where this thing leads. Do you think that for a moment he was worried he might lose to 13 tiny colonies? No, they had small economy, right? They had small military. They were disorganized. And he was the king over the largest military power on the globe at the time. And so I think that he thought, why in the world would I need to negotiate with them when I can simply crush them and get 100% of what I want instead of only half of what I want? So blows it is, right? It's going to come to conflict. So now what we're going to see is that the Second Continental Congress has a number of things they have to do. First and foremost, they need to organize a Continental Army. If the British have said, if the King and Parliament have said blows must decide, then we have to be prepared for blows. We have to be prepared to defend ourselves. So they organize the Continental Army and they choose George Washington to lead it. Now, Washington was a good choice, and he winds up being a great choice. I don't know that he was a great general or a great military man prior. He had a mixed record when he was with the British military. But oftentimes, I think history makes the man, not the other way around. And this was a time that Washington really rose to. There weren't very many other choices. Very few others had any military experience. Very few others were of fighting age. Those that had military experience often were too old. So George Washington was in a very, very small group that could even handle the job, that could do it. So when he gets chosen, this is something that, and it takes him some time to get his footing, but he does rise spectacularly to the challenge and becomes really quite the military genius. But coming into it, that's not who he was. History made him into that, right? That the moment made him. So the Second Continental Congress also has to do things that government does, right? They have to authorize the printing of money. They don't want to continue to use the British pound because if they do, all that's doing is strengthening the economy of the country we're at war with. So we can no longer use the British pound. So they have to authorize and print money. They have to collect taxes. We can't very well fight a war and fund a military if we don't have taxes. They're going to have to purchase and distribute military supplies, and there's any number of different things that government's going to have to do. They don't do this in a great way. You have to understand the 13 colonies really were not unified. In very few things were they thinking along those lines. So you had 13 very different colonies looking out for themselves first, understanding maybe the need, but not understanding how it was going to work in reality. And so this was a very tough thing. The Second Continental Congress, also has to create a committee to conduct diplomacy. We need allies. We need to be recognized by other countries. So we create a committee that's going to correspond. They're going to write letters. We're even going to send diplomats, right, ambassadors to other major countries that we think we can get on our side. They need to recognize us in the international community as a legitimate sovereign country. And this is no easy thing. It's going to take a long time before we are widely recognized, but we need that. If we can get recognized, if we can get aid, then that could certainly help our cause. All right. Now, the reality is that with the creation of the Second Continental Congress, we're no longer dealing with discontent, aggrieved colonists. Now, the Second Continental Congress is a fully formed and functioning government. That doesn't mean its job is going to be easy. That doesn't mean it's going to be recognized by everybody. But they are a fully formed government. The Second Continental Congress represents kind of our first truly governing body. Now, the biggest challenge that they're going to face is that they have to get the people of the colonies, 13 different colonies, in a really large and spread out area to accept their authority, right? They have to get people to accept their authority to govern. They have to get people to accept their authority to tax. They have to convince people that this money that they've never seen before is actually worth something, right? They're printing money. Well, it was chaotic. It was very difficult. Um, I mean, you can imagine, right? You're used to one thing for your entire life, and everybody within living memory only knows it one way. Now, all of a sudden, it changes, and people need to have faith in their government. But there was a lack of that, right? There was definitely a lack of faith in government. They had to do all of this, by the way, while fighting a war, which is neither easy nor cheap. And so they have real issues because not only are people maybe not so willing to accept the authority of a new government, but we've already proven we don't really like taxes, and we want very limited taxes. But taxes are a necessity of government, especially during war times. So, the most significant accomplishment that we're going to see come out of the Second Continental Congress is a document that they create. It really goes a long way in helping to make their cause for independence, and it is, of course, the Declaration of Independence. This is the biggest, that's not the only accomplishment. You had to start somewhere, and you know that no matter where they begin, it's going to be a challenge. But the Declaration of Independence goes a long way towards stating their case for independence, towards gaining maybe a little bit of unity of thought, maybe not quite unity of action at this point yet, but unity of thought in a lot of cases. So, our next video is going to take a look at the Declaration of Independence. It's one that I absolutely love, so I hope that you'll tune in. If you haven't already subscribed, do so right now. Leave any comments. I'd love to hear from you. And thanks for watching, guys. I appreciate it.